Hi, welcome back to the Big B and Little T channel. I'm Tina, also known as Little T. And today I'm going to show you how I make a butternut squash soup. This soup is perfect for the fall because you'll find lots of squash in the grocery store, and it's very warming and smooth, and it has a slightly sweet taste from the squash, but it's very savory at the same time. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's delicious. So right now we're going to get the butternut squash in the oven, and we're going to let it bake. It bakes for about 45 minutes, just until you can insert a knife in it and it goes through smoothly. So that's the first step, and then we'll get on with the rest of the recipe. So let's get to cooking. Here's the two halves of the butternut squash. It was like this. Just cut it vertically in half. Then I put with my fingers, just a little bit of olive oil, smeared it on top of it, a little shake of some sea salt, and then a few grinds of some black pepper. We're going to turn them upside down to bake them in the oven for about 45 minutes at 400 degrees. As soon as you can take a knife and just insert it into the skin and it goes in really easily, then you'll know that your squash is done. So let's get it into the oven. We've roasted our butternut squash. You can barely see it there in the pan. And our next step is going to be chopping up this medium onion. I have a sweet yellow onion here, and 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. We're going to put that in our skillet and get those sauteed. So I'm going to get these chopped up. Obviously this is already chopped up for me, and you could definitely do your own fresh minced garlic. I just happen to have this and like to use it because it's convenient. So let's get to chopping. I have a medium-sized skillet here. I'm just going to get all of my onions into it. There's that medium onion. It's been chopped. And then we have 2 teaspoons of minced garlic we're going to add. And the recipe says you can saute either in olive oil if you like, or in water or broth. I'm just going to add a little bit of water to this, maybe a teaspoon. I'll use my handy dandy teaspoon here and put that in there, and we'll start sauteing this on our stove. I'm going to turn the heat on to medium-high, and let these vegetables saute. It's a non-stick skillet, so we shouldn't have any trouble with any of this sticking. While that is cooking, we're going to get our butternut squash ready because it's cooled off. Here we have our butternut squash. It's been out of the oven while I ate my lunch, so it's completely cooled off. I'm just going to take a spoon. I have a grapefruit spoon. You see how it's kind of pokey on the ends, but any spoon's going to work. And all we're going to do is just take out these seeds. And what you can't see is that I have a trash can right at my feet, and I'm just going to put those down in the trash can. They scoop out so easily, and those little stringy parts that you don't want to eat come out right along with the seeds. I don't know if anybody's ever toasted a butternut squash seed, but to me they look just like pumpkin seeds. So maybe that's a thing. And we don't want to get the skin in with our butternut squash, so I'm just going to take my spoon, which has those little pointy edges, and I'm just going to kind of go around the edges of the squash and scoop it out. We're just going to put it in this shallow salad bowl. You can just kind of scrape it right off the skin. the skin there? It's whitish. You can tell the difference between the squash and the skin very easily. And then just kind of have to go around the edges where it's still close to the skin. And you could definitely double the size of this recipe if you wanted to make it for a larger group. This will be enough soup for Brian and myself, probably for a dinner, and then maybe some left over for lunch. We might be able to squeeze 2 dinners out of it. And it's yummy to serve alongside some crackers, or if you're doing it with your Thanksgiving meal, you would have dressing there, some hot rolls. That's pretty good. That's pretty clean. The rest of this other end of the squash. You can hear our onions and garlic are sauteing. I guess we could measure it and see how many cups it is in case you wanted to use frozen butternut squash, and then you would know how much to buy. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to measure it, and then as soon as I get it measured, I'm just going to put it right down into my high-speed blender container, because that's how we're going to get it all smoothed out. So you're going to have probably between 3 and 4 cups of squash. Again, depending on the size of your squash. Let's move this out of the way and we'll get to our next step. Our onions and garlic are nice and sauteed. The recipe calls for a teaspoon of salt to be stirred in to those vegetables. There's our butternut squash in the blender. We're going to add the vegetables to that. There's the onion and the garlic. We had just a little bit of water added to it so they would not brown too much or stick. Probably a tablespoon. I added a little bit while they were cooking. So we've got our onion, our garlic, our salt, and our butternut squash. The recipe calls for a teaspoon of maple syrup. It also calls for a quarter of a teaspoon of nutmeg, or however much nutmeg you like. And then the recipe calls for 32 ounces of broth, and I have Better Than Bouillon, and I'm going to measure out 32 ounces of water and the appropriate amount of bouillon to go with that. It's 1 teaspoon of bouillon for every 8 ounces. So we'll do 4 teaspoons of bouillon, and I can never get this open. I don't know what it does in the refrigerator. It's like it seals itself up tighter over there. That helped. Okay, so here we go. We're going to add the bouillon and some water. There's 32 ounces. Now I'm going to use my tablespoon because that's the same as 3 teaspoons. So we've got that. So that's a tablespoon, and that's 3 teaspoons of the bouillon mix. And 1 more teaspoon, that's going to be 4 teaspoons. And you can easily just buy a carton of vegetable broth. It comes in the 32 ounce paper containers, and that will work just the same as the bouillon. And if you aren't vegetarian, you could use chicken broth or chicken stock. We're just making this vegetarian or vegan. My high-speed blender has a soup setting, and you just turn it to the soup setting and let it go until it is done making the soup. So, got a lot of broth here. Just a second. Messy, messy, messy. We're just gonna put the lid on the blender and turn it to the soup setting and blend away. Until this turns it off. I will take 5 minutes or 5. See when it's done. It's noisy! Okay, our butternut squash soup is done. The blender is very warm. I'm going to pour it in my Dutch oven. When it's time for dinner, I'm just going to reheat it gently and serve it for dinner. There's our Dutch oven, and we're just going to pour the butternut squash soup right in. Golden and beautiful. Let's get a spoon. A last ingredients it calls for is either some butter or some olive oil added, and then serve it with some cracked pepper. And I found this at the store yesterday. It's one of my favorite vegan cheese brands. I didn't realize they made plant butter, so we'll get ourselves a tablespoon of that and drop it down into the soup while it's hot so it can melt, and we'll stir it right in. Okay, there's our tablespoon approximately. You know how I measure. This soup comes together really quickly. It's just chopping that onion and garlic, which you could already buy pre-chopped onions if you'd like to do that. Your container of broth, and a few spices, a little bit of maple syrup, some nutmeg, and it's done with your blender's work. I call that a nice, fast, delicious dinner. Thanks for watching. I'm glad you tuned in to this video showing how to make butternut squash soup. I hope you try it over this fall season, maybe even for your Thanksgiving meal. Lucy's just had her lunch. She's back there getting a drink of water, as you can see. I hope you have a great holiday, and we will see you next time.